about this conversation because it's a conversation that affects so many people. And it's a journey that can be very lonely. The autoimmune disorders and the illnesses and the conditions can leave people very, very lonely. And we were just talking about off camera that, my journey with cancer, it was almost like you were put on this conveyor belt and you knew exactly what you needed to do. You do this, you do that, and this is the treatment, this is it. But in the whole autoimmune disease world, it can be a very dark place because it takes a long time for you to find out what the issue is. And once you find out, the conventional medicine is leaving a lot of people without answers. And Setare will talk to us about how she went on this beautiful journey to mix her background from conventional medicine, coming from the nursing background, the critical and trauma care, which is very, very stressful and kind of high level care, to blending with the holistic and integrative approach, which I think it's key these days if you want to achieve health. Hi, Setare, how are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to connect with you.
I am so excited about you sharing with us your journey. So why don't you start telling us? I saw a post yesterday. It was like, me at 26 years old, and you had about 5 or 6 conditions. And then you today, like, that was just so powerful to see the picture. I was like, oh my God, like that is a lot.
Yeah, no, my health journey has been really like just messy and really complicated. And like you said, it was really difficult coming from a conventional medicine background because I was taught in my training that if your labs are normal, you are healthy, right? And I was really, really sick and my labs looked pretty okay. And I was, I just didn't fit that model. And so my health journey started in my early 20s. I had just graduated from my bachelor's degree. I became an ICU nurse when I was around 22 years old. I ended up getting food poisoning from the hospital cafeteria, and that triggered a host of mystery symptoms. And at the time, I had no idea what was happening to my body because I was previously very healthy, had never been on medications, never broken a bone in my body. And all of a sudden, I had all these new digestive issues and chronic fatigue and neurological symptoms. And I'd go to my primary care provider, like telling them my symptoms, but they'd blame it on I was working the night shift at the time. I was under a lot of stress with my new job and just wouldn't really take my concerns seriously. And when I would get lab work done, everything came back normal. So I just thought, maybe it is stress, maybe it's something else. But then just over time, over several months, my symptoms just kept getting worse and worse. And eventually got to the point where I was completely bedbound and I couldn't work anymore. And that's whenever my doctors did a full workup on me. I was being tested for and being ruled out for things like multiple sclerosis and autoimmune disease and pancreatic issues and things like that. And everything pretty much came back inconclusive. I tested for like high inflammatory markers and some malabsorption and some vitamin deficiencies, but there was nothing that said, you have this, right? Which is in cancer, usually, I know sometimes diagnosis can take a long time, but literally they could not find anything that was wrong with me. And I thought that I was going crazy. I was like, this must be in my head. You know what I mean? Because I was like, I was in my 20s. I looked healthy. But I just felt awful. And,
did the doctors ever mention that this could be a bit of a mental health issue as well? Because I know that a lot of people suffer from kind of, this thing going like, my labs are great. And, this person keep coming back and the doctor's like, well, maybe we need to look, this is maybe a mental health issue, which is, it's not, I mean, a lot of the times it's not because you're living in your body and your body's sick. Did they ever say that? Or
so I had a physician once told me that I had chronic fatigue syndrome, and I was like, that's not even a thing. That just means you don't know what's wrong with me, which is like, I always tell my clients, like, anything that has the name like syndrome after it just means that we don't know the root cause. So, but yeah, so
like we didn't tick any of the boxes, so let's just tick this one.
A syndrome just means like a host of symptoms that we don't know what causes it, but they often present themselves together. That's a syndrome. It doesn't mean anything really. It just means we don't know what's causing it in the conventional world. But then after that, I wasn't able to work anymore. I was like 23 years old and I was like, this is not acceptable to me. And a family friend recommended I go see alternative medicine practitioners. And I was very reluctant to at the time because I was like, I'm not, I don't want to go see these people. Like, they're not going to help me. What do they know? But then I went to a functional medicine provider, and that completely opened my eyes to this whole new side of medicine, like herbal medicine and nutrition and things like that. And I started implementing some changes. And I noticed really early on that the foods that I ate affected the way that I felt. So I just really knew early on that the foods were going to heal me, but I just didn't really know what foods. And eventually, like, I was seeing every alternative medicine provider I could get my hands on. I was doing Ayurveda, acupuncture, traditional Chinese medicine, functional medicine, trying all these different things to try to get well. And then, I was spending all this money on practitioners and supplements and things like that. And I still wasn't really getting better. And I was able to eventually go back to work, but I felt like I was functioning maybe at like 60%. Like I was going to work and then all I could do was come home and sleep. Like I wasn't really living, if that makes sense. And it was really frustrating because I was like working so hard towards my healing, but wasn't really getting all the results that I wanted. But then I realized later on, after several years of trying so many different things, that it was going to be food. I just knew that it was going to be food, because the foods, anytime, I ate clean, I felt better. Anytime I ate something off, it affected every symptom that I had. And eventually in 2018, I came across the Medical Medium books by Anthony William. And if you haven't heard about those books, the books basically teach you the root cause of chronic illness and how to heal using nutrition and herbal medicine. And that was the most life-changing thing that ever happened to me. I read those books. I think I read the first book in like 2 days. And I learned that the root cause of my chronic health symptoms was caused by pathogens in my body, low-grade chronic infections, viral infections, Epstein-Barr virus. I learned that I had strep overgrowth in my intestinal tract, and just everything just lined up. And so I started implementing a low-fat, plant-based diet and medical medium protocols. And within 6 months, I was completely off of my medications. And I was on thyroid medication because I had low-functioning thyroid. I was on steroids for low blood pressure and something called POTS, or postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And my health just improved exponentially. And ironically, but when I came across these books, I was actually getting my doctorate and because to become a nurse practitioner. So it was really funny because I was, learning everything conventional medicine, but I was implementing all this natural medicine. And I just felt like by the time I graduated, I really no longer wanted to work in the conventional medicine model. So I started my own virtual practice in 2021, and I've been helping people all across the world essentially heal from chronic illness with this information. So
that is incredible. That's amazing. So, I mean, there's so many things here that I think it's so important to highlight to people. I think I'm quite interested to understand, that food poisoning situation, like that episode, that really stands out to me, because I have read a lot of different literature that talks about, from a moment like that, it can really mess your whole gut digestive system for a long time.
Yeah.
And, and we human beings, we just think, I know it was only a one-off, and, whatever, just go back, like do whatever. Like how much do you think the beginning of a sickness was that episode?
Oh, that was absolutely my trigger, 100%. And what I learned actually from medical medium information is that, we all collect pathogens throughout our lives. We share drinks with people, we kiss people, we pick our nose, we use restrooms. We collect pathogens throughout our lives. And when our immune system is intact, we don't have symptoms. However, when something drastically weakens the immune system, in my case was food poisoning, that reduces your immune system so much that these dormant pathogens, they're opportunistic. So they can reactivate and proliferate and cause a lot of chronic health symptoms. And, I've worked with hundreds of clients, and some of them have had triggers from food poisoning. Some of them have had triggers from grief, breakups, divorce, coronavirus, or the COVID virus, flu virus, colds. People gotten sick after spider bites, mold exposures, anything that can weaken the immune system, that can cause these pathogens to reactivate, and those cause illness in the body.
Yeah. And I think that is so key. Like for me, when I started my healing journey, as soon as I read, we have cancer cells, but if you have an immune system that is strong, your immune system is going to get on top of it. So, my focus was removed from, the cancer to, I just want to strengthen my immune system.
Exactly.
And the reality is, as you know, a lot of people have a very weak immune system because of the way that they're eating, the way they're living around stress and emotional traumas and wounds and things like that, and harmful habits. How much of your healing do you think, of course, the food is, once you clear everything out, how much of habits is important, your daily other habits other than food, it is for your own healing and the healing of your clients?
That's a great question. So I think consistency is key here. And, a lot of people ask me like, oh, like, do I have to take these, I really love supplements, herbs, especially because, when it comes to an immune system problem, we want to support the immune system, and nature has provided us with incredible herbs and supplements and foods to support the immune system. So, and people always ask me like, oh, do I have to eat like this forever? Do I have to take these herbs and supplements forever? And that's not, that's not the case for everyone. Most people don't need to, but it really comes down to is that, once you suppress that viral load, reduce infection in your body, once your immune system is strong enough, you don't need as much support later on once you're feeling better, right? A lot of people really need to invest that time early on in their, kind of when they're really, really sick. That's when the time we invest the most in their herbs, the supplements, the foods. And then again, once they're feeling better, we can kind of back off a little bit. They can expand on their diet. They can reduce their vitamins and herbs and things like that because their immune system is stronger at that point. Their viral load is down. Their bacterial loads are down.
Yeah. And I think, once you get onto that journey of feeling so good physically, because of course that also affects you mentally and emotionally. I mean, why would you want to go back? I mean, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Like,
do
you find that happening like with your clients? Like,
it's really funny because, when I started implementing, these healing protocols and, low fat, plant-based diet and things like that, I always thought like, eventually I'd go back to eating like more regular foods. And I know regular foods means different things for everyone, but, I decided to eat like more meat and like go back to eating the way that I was before. But now it's like, I have no desire to eat that way. And I'm a lot more flexible than I used to be. Like I used to do a lot more like juices and smoothies and, a lot more, raw foods and things like that. Now I'm a lot more flexible. But yeah, I personally have no desire to do that. I don't crave those foods anymore. Like I don't crave pizza. I don't crave like those things just don't like, I'd much rather eat like some watermelon than like a slice of pizza because it just feels good to me. And it's really interesting because I've had so many clients that are so resistant to changing their diets, but now it's like they crave those foods because, when I look at pizza, like, yeah, it tastes good, but I also think of it like feeling sluggish. Like I think of how it's going to make me feel after I eat it. And I think a lot of people start making those connections. Like, I just crave raw foods. I crave fruits and vegetables. I crave potatoes. I crave these things because it just gives me energy. I feel light. I feel like just my digestion is better. Like everything feels good. So it's kind of interesting to see that shift happen in a lot of people.
It only takes them a couple of weeks to eat really healthily. And then if they eat a slice of pizza, right, they'll feel so sluggish, right? And it's so easy to make that connection, right? Like they go like, oh my God, I don't want this anymore,
Exactly.
So when it comes to, like you mentioned about your clients resisting to change, what do you think is the biggest motivator for your clients to change? I presumably by the time they come to you, they're pretty desperate because they have tried the conventional medicine, right? And nothing has worked for them. But it's still, changing behavior is one of the hardest things, right? Like how do you see that happening?
That's a great question. And, unfortunately, like food is it's just so important to us as people. It's our culture. It's our social life. It's like food just plays such a huge role in our lives. And, there's some people who are like a lot more open to changing their diets and some people who aren't. And I think it's all really, really valid. Like, I always tell my clients it took me like a decade to eat the way that I do. Like when I got sick in 2012, I like stopped with gluten. And I remember my doctor told me to stop dairy. And I was like, no. It took me like another 6 months to get off dairy, So it was like this very gradual process for me. And there are some people who like, they just kind of eat to live. They don't like, they eat to fuel, they eat to fuel. Like they don't really care about food as much. And those people, is actually a lot easier for them to make that transition than I have some people like, oh my gosh, I need spice, I need flavor, I need oil, I need butter. Like I need those things to, feel like myself. And those people just take a lot longer, which is fine. Everything is completely valid. And some people just need more time. And, I always try to meet my clients where they're at, like if they're not ready to do this, then we modify, we try and ease their body into it.
Yeah. And in regards to exercise, I've seen you on your rebounder on Instagram and I love it. How much, again, like coming from being on that place of feeling so fatigued and tired, like doing chemo, I felt like that. And I did a live with somebody and somebody asked the question, like, how isn't it better for me to leave my body to rest during chemo rather than push it to exercise? And I'm like, well, it's a fine balance, right? So how did you manage that, especially when you were so sick, because it's so easy to go like, I can't do anything because I'm just too sick.
Yeah, that's a really great topic, and it's something I'm actually really passionate about, because in the conventional world, we're just taught like if you eat good and you exercise, you're healthy. But when you're sick, exercise can actually work against you. It's very adrenalizing, right? And if your nervous system is just so weak and fatigued and inflamed, and you have really weak adrenals, exercise is actually going to work against you. And I do think it's a really one size fits all. So if I have a client, what I call like mattress island, if they're really, really sick, like they can't really get out of bed, they are not exercising. Their exercise is bathing, preparing their food, and then walking to the bathroom. That to me is their exercise. And I really do encourage like gradual exercise. And I think walking is a really great place to start. I think getting outside is a really great place to start, even if you walk to like the mailbox and back. Like that to me is a win. And I was really deconditioned when I was really sick. Like I'm very petite now, but as you can imagine, I think I was like 10 or 15 pounds lighter than what I was. I was just skin and bones. I was so weak and sick that, exercise was, not even possible for me. But, it took me, at least a year to build back up to like where I can like exercise and do yoga. And I love rebounding for that reason, because it's a really gentle form of exercise. And if for some reason you can't even stand on a trampoline, you can sit on an exercise ball and just sit and bounce and just do that for a minute a day, and just increases tolerated. And I'm a big fan of just like even like doing like bed Pilates. I have a lot of clients that do bed Pilates, where they just kind of like do stretches while they're in bed and things like that. And it's hard to find that fine line, because movement is important. It's important to get the muscles moving, and even get the lymphatic system moving, because that's really important for healing as well. But I think there's a lot of different ways that we can implement movement. And again, I'm actually, I would have to say I'm a lot more on the conservative side when it comes to exercise. I'd rather almost my clients not exercise than exercise, because healing requires energy, and I'd rather them use that energy, the little energy they have left in their body, to go towards healing, rebuilding the nervous system, repairing tissues in the body, than to go towards exercise, if that makes sense.
And I think like what you said is really important. When you think about exercise, people think like, oh, I need to do like a HIIT workout for 45 minutes. Like, no, like like during chemos, a walk around the block, it was enough for me, like on my worst days, and that made me feel better, with my nauseas and things like that. But my exercise was preparing my own food. I was so conscious about my own energy that I only had energy to go to the bathroom, to come back to bed, to prepare my food, to eat. My levels of energy were like, I needed to calculate where I was going to use it. And I can imagine chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia, things like that, are even worse than that. So I think it's changing the perspective of what it is, isn't it? Like exercise doesn't have to be running, it doesn't have to be a 45 minutes thing, it's just moving, so you get your lymphatic system, like you're saying, like the circulation and things like that, right?
Exactly.
That's awesome. So can you give us an example of a client that you worked with and you're really proud of, kind of the turnaround? You really love like to bringing those kind of really live experience. I think, a lot of people will be listening to this, and they will be in that situation where, I'm sure I've got some autoimmune disorders coming, like in my body, experiencing something. I don't have any answers, but I think it's this or that. I don't know what to do. They're feeling lost. They're feeling, helpless and hopeless. So they can kind of see for themselves what it is possible to really, go from that place to being like, you are a living example of it. But just talk us through a client example.
Yeah. So one of my favorite client stories is this woman. She's probably in her 30s at this point, but she has something called POTS, or postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a neurological disorder, and it causes issues with breathing, blood pressure, heart rate control, and anything based on the autonomic nervous system. So a lot of these people can't really function in the real world. They pass out a lot. They can't stand. They can't really walk. They're usually wheelchair bound. They can't really leave the house. They're chronically fatigued, and it predominantly affects young women. So that's another issue as well. Like these people go misdiagnosed for a very long time, and their concerns aren't really listened to well in the medical world, which is really unfortunate. But this woman had been sick.
And this is something that you've experienced yourself as well, right? As a young,
I had as well.
Yeah. So and you mentioned like this is something that by the time that diagnosis considered kind of an autoimmune disease as well, or okay.
Yeah, it is. And then again, the in the conventional world, we don't know the cause, but per medical medium information, we know it's actually viral due to the Epstein-Barr virus attacking the nervous, the vagus nerves, and toxic heavy metals, and sluggish liver, and so many other things. But so this woman had come to me. She had predominantly been using her wheelchair for about 10 years now, and she was a mother. She had a daughter. She couldn't run around with her kid, and just she was really, really debilitated by it. She was on several medications that weren't necessarily doing much for her, and the doctor just kind of said, "This is your life. This is going to be your life." And she started working with me maybe about a year and a half ago. And within 6 months, she stopped using her wheelchair. So now she's using a walker, which is huge because, as you can imagine, someone using a wheelchair for 10 years and within 6 months they're no longer using it. Yeah, she's not running yet, but she's now using a walker to get around.
That's amazing.
And she can drive now. She can go to the grocery store. She can do so much more. And I think we've gotten her off of almost all of her medications because she no longer needs them. So this is a really slow progress thing, but it's one of those things where I feel like in a year she'll be functioning at 60%. Give her 2 years, she'll be at 100%. You know what I mean? So it's just really, really incredible to see things like that happen. And for those of you who are on your healing journey, please know it's not going to take 3 months. This is something that's happened in your body for a long time. It's gotten you to the point where you got really, really sick. So just because you're not seeing results right away, please know it doesn't mean you're not going to ever see them. And, it took me, I was one of those people who got better. I got off my medications in 6 months. And then I had flares. I'd get better, get worse, get better, get worse. And fortunately, I've been flare free for the last 3 years. But just, I just want people to know that healing is just really messy. And it's just kind of the process that we have to go through. And our body is always working for us and always wants us to heal. It's just, we're just up against so much, right? We're constantly exposed to toxins and pathogens that wipe out our immune system and make us sick. So we're just living in a world where it's not easy to be healthy. And unfortunately, we have to work so much harder than our grandparents did to be healthy, than our great-grandparents did. So it's just something we have to work harder towards, but healing is 100% possible.
I love so many things that you said here. And I just would like to go back to the mindset of this particular client, which I think it's just incredible what you've achieved with this lady. What do you think was the mindset behind it? I find that, people want radical change in their lives, but they don't want to take radical steps. Of course, this person had to have a mindset of I know I'm going to have to change absolutely everything in my life. And not only that, I'm going to have to be in discomfort.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can't be sitting in the sofa and, on your way to health. What is the mindset do you find that your clients that gets the best results have?
I think a lot of people come to me, like you said, kind of like rock bottom, and they'll do anything.
Yes.
So I think that's, and I find a lot of people in those unfortunate circumstances, they say, I tried everything. I tried these diets. I tried these supplements. I tried these cleanses and these detoxes and all these programs, and nothing worked. So they're just kind of at that point where it's like, if you just guide me and tell me what to do, I will do it.
Yes.
And again, I always tell people, none of my clients have the same protocol. I'm always trying to find ways to make it individualized for them. Because maybe, some people, I could put someone on a protocol, but if they're not capable of even going to the grocery store and buying all those foods and preparing 3 meals a day, then what I tell them is useless. I have to meet them where they're at.
Yes.
So, definitely find, I always encourage people, find a practitioner that's going to meet you where you're at, who really works with you to see what works for you. And I think mental health is a huge barrier, mindset and mental health is a huge barrier to people getting better. So I think addressing some mindset and mental health components is really, really important. I think those are huge blocks in some people's healing journeys that really need to be addressed.
Yeah.
I think just meeting everyone where they're at is really important.
Yeah. And I think you touched on something really important as well. You mentioned at the beginning of this chat here that some people might be triggered by an emotional trauma, right? As opposed to just physical. Can you give us an example of how you potentially help somebody, through that while the trigger was an emotional issue as opposed to just physical?
Yeah. So, I think a lot of food can be really emotional because we get really attached to certain things, like coffee, people love coffee. Like it's just something that's really hard to get rid of. And, I had actually a client last week who disclosed to me that she had a lot of, trauma around food. Food was her friend, and it was something she used to cope with a lot. And now that I was removing those unproductive foods from her diet, she felt this grief and this loss. And she like never knew how to cook. So it was just this thing that was just so difficult for her to implement. So, I think, finding things that, one, addressing the trauma around her food really, really helped me support her in a way, because those were things that I didn't know, right? So I was really happy she disclosed that with me, and I was able to find things that brought her joy, because you have to experience some joy on your healing journey, right? I think a lot of people forget that, like we have to find joy. And this woman, like for me to take away those foods was removing every piece of joy she had left. So I think, really just finding, foods that were healing, that also brought her joy was really important. So yeah, I think again, everyone where they're at.
Yeah, I love that, because, and this is why the drastic diets and the cleansings, they don't work, because, people just push themselves through the 30 days, the week, or the 2 weeks, and then they go back to their normal selves, right? It's just finding that sustainable way that's going to work for people for the long term, right? Because like you mentioned, healing doesn't happen overnight, right?
Exactly.
So, and just one last question. What do you think it keeps your clients, being patient enough, and trusting the process in the healing journey? Because again, I think that that is also so important.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And the thing that I see the most, and actually I feel like this really resonated with me on my healing journey, was seeing other people's success stories. Because it's really about that mindset of, well, if they can do it, so can I, right? There's no reason like they could do it and you couldn't, right? So I think just constantly being inspired by what other people have gone through. And that's why, I think, me sharing my story was like a huge, a game changer for me in my practice, because people see me like, well, she did it, well, so can I just have to figure out how. Right. I think continually and the one thing that I really love is on a medical medium's Instagram, he's constantly posting success stories. And when I was really sick, I would just fixate on those, because I knew like I just needed to see it. And like these people were very brutally honest, like it took me a year to get to this point. I lost my hair at the first few months because I had been in a really stressful event, and I thought, maybe I was going backwards, and, people just disclosing all the intricacies and like the ups and downs of healing. And I think that's all very validating, because I think it's like really misleading when people like post things like they say, oh, I did this and then I got better and then everything was great. It was just all rainbows and butterflies. That's never the case. So I think, just really, witnessing those raw experiences of people and sharing their stories is like probably the most powerful thing we can do as humans.
Yeah, I think you're so right. Like I didn't spend any time watching any stories that were not absolutely successful in my cancer journey. I read all the books, and I'm like, if these people can do, they came back from the dead, and so this is easy for me. This is gonna be fine. So, and I think it's so easy to fall into that victim mentality, and just go like, oh my God, but so and so also has that. They also tie. And I think spending time with people that have conquered whatever you're trying to conquer is so important, because you do see, if they've done it, I can do it. And there is nobody better than teaching them, like you're saying, because you lived through it. And with all due respect, like when you go to a doctor who hasn't lived through any of it, like the cancer, I remember my oncologist saying, like, you might feel a little bit, tired, a bit nauseous. And I'm like, do you want to get a hit of those? Like this, this is not for the faint-hearted, this is really strong. And unless I think you go through it, sometimes you don't realize what it is like. And I think that goes hand in hand with like helping, reaching out to somebody who's gone through it. So you really feel understood, you really feel like, I think this person really gets me.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. So now how can people reach out to you? I'm going to add your details below, but like, how can they connect with you?
Thank you. Yeah. I have a website, 𝗙𝗚𝗦𝗖𝗢𝗎.com. I'm also on Instagram, Dr.Setare.np. So Dr.Setare.np. And
I'll
I'm
add the details
I'm
anyway,
most
just
happy
make
about
sure.
her. Yeah.
So guys, connect to Dr. Setare. She's amazing. She's doing an incredible job. She has already helped so many people. And I don't think there is anybody better than somebody who's gone through so many different conditions. And, you know, if you are in that place where you don't know where to go, this is your sign.
Thank you so much for having me, Angelica. It was truly an honor to connect with you.
Thank you so much. Take care.